We meet every Wednesdays, except when we don't do that. First week or the first Wednesday of every month, we like to go over to Dallas Hackers Association. That's something we do. But when we don't do that, we're over here. We're giving talks. If you want to join our Discord, I threw that right there. It's a great place if you have any sort of questions.
You're gonna throw up a question?
What? Oh yeah, if y'all wanted to have Q&A, that's fine. It's not one thing, it's just another. Right? Ooh. Ooh.
Yeah.
You ready?
I got it.
Cool. Sorry. A little permission issue. Oh, for fuck's sake, man. Delete this.
Oh, you didn't have like permission?
Yeah, I didn't have permission to do that.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah, if at any point you guys have questions, and I'm sure y'all will, go ahead and you can use that link. As far as ways of announcements, we're having Fire Talks coming up soon. There's a link right there next to it. If you have any sort of little thing you've been working on yourself and you think it's relevant, or you think it would just be cool to show off, you can use that form to from the link to submit it. And if we like it, then we'll have you come up here and get heckled. And it's a great time for everybody. Coming up soon is Hack UTD. If you like hackathons, definitely go to that. If you don't like hackathons, you should still go because there's lots of free food. We're going to be doing a CTF while we're over there from about 7 p.m., about 4 hours long. If you've never done a CTF before, you should definitely come to that. We're going to be there too, so if you get stuck, we'll probably help you out. The MITRE Cyber Challenge is also coming up. That's a little bit more advanced. If you've done some CTFs before, then you should definitely check that one out if you feel up to it. And then tomorrow is the Circadians Project Ares, which is a thing that it's a cyber defense virtual cybersecurity training program that you can go do. It's great. It will be a great thing for anybody who's looking to build skills. And that's being hosted by the school, the Department of ECS. So we're going to talk about we're going to be doing a lot of demoing today. But preliminary, we're going to look at the Wikipedia definition, PowerShell. Compared to Bash or most other shells in Linux, they're pretty simple. They're just a shell. But newer ones like Bash tend to also introduce some more interesting concepts like functional programming, so you can have loops, if conditionals, and that's how you get real Bash scripting. PowerShell, though, was always designed to be a scripting language from the get-go, and so unlike things in Bash, PowerShell is object-oriented, whereas most things in a Linux environment, you're going to see it's really just either text or files. It's a lot more, it's strongly typed and it's safe typed. So it's a lot of hand holding along the way, and you'll see some examples of that when we demo it. See your questions. Cool. You guys suck. Bunch of tests. Really great question. Why does PowerShell exist when Windows and all its superiority has GUIs and Linux does not? The guys over at Microsoft noticed that the guys who really knew the command line to Linux were way faster at doing anything that they could do with their GUIs. And there's a lot of extra things that PowerShell can do. There's a lot more okay, my bad. So PowerShell has connections into pretty much every Windows application that comes built in with it. So you can manage a lot of the stuff that is on a Windows box or Windows server without actually having to get into the GUIs of stuff. So it's really handy for managing operating systems. With that being said, you have task schedulers built into Windows, so you can also do plenty of automation. And then you can also do remote administration. PowerShell allows you to execute remote commands over the wire. Let's see, new questions. Wow, cool. So awesome, y'all. That's really all I got. Let's go straight into demoing, because I want to really just show you guys what this is. And of course, it's going to take like 10 years to get there because just nothing wants to work. Whoop. It's the power of the internet. We're now on a Windows machine. Okay, so let's open up PowerShell. So this is what a PowerShell terminal looks like. Let's fix this. Y'all totally can't see that. Is that better? We'll tone this down a little bit. Is that good for y'all? Cool. So you have your command prompt. It looks similar to the command.exe, but it's PowerShell. It's new and cooler. Let's go ahead and throw out some simple commands. One of the interesting things that you'll notice about PowerShell versus Bash is that pretty much everything, if you can spell right too, it really helps. Every command in PowerShell pretty much starts with a verb. So instead of having things like in the Linux world, if I want to take the output of a file and or the data in a file and I want to display it on my terminal, so intuitively the command to do that is cat. Didn't y'all know that? Cat, because that's what it means to take a file and put it to your output. That obviously makes sense. No, what you got?
Cat doesn't make sense for that.
No, nothing makes sense about that. It's just too short. So let's think logically. What would we do if we wanted to get the contents from a file? How about get content, and then you put in the file as a parameter? That makes sense. So everything about PowerShell is just far superior.
You're making too much sense right now.
So simple command is get host. This will show you pretty much everything about this. It's really more of a show terminal. So I know I said everything is intuitive and simple, but it's actually not. Get host will show you everything about this particular session I have in PowerShell. I'm sure I have questions already, but let's see what you guys got. Uh-oh, I hear chuckling.
You might want to check Discord too.
Do I want to check Discord? Y'all. Oh my god. We're not going to touch that. So here's an excellent question that actually makes sense. Somebody's asking, how do you elaborate on, or can I elaborate on executing remote commands? So yes, I can, but I probably won't because I've never done it. Normally, most commands from inside PowerShell allow you to supply an argument to the computer name. So say I wanted to change a user, a local user on a computer, but I want to change the local user on my friend's computer. That's an argument that I can supply, is the computer name, and then it goes over the wire, and it uses a built-in service of Windows called the WS Management. And so it all kind of happens magically, but there's not, it's not as fun as saying it goes over SSH. I've got all sorts of commands here I want to show y'all, but I need to. All right. So y'all have seen Task Manager. It's a really cool, handy tool. If you haven't seen it before, I'm sure you have. But look at this. It's a gross, disgusting GUI, and I hate this. GUIs suck. So let's be cool hackers, and let's just go ahead and get processes. Processes. And there's also tab completion because we're cool like that. Oh, and you look, I have all sorts of processes. Isn't that awesome? And I can do management. So say I wanted to, say I had a notepad.
The normal way to just like hit on the Linux and then use the number.
Huh? Can I like get fetch lines?
Or even just quit a particular process.
Oh yeah. So I'll show you this right now. I have a notepad open. Let's say I wanted to stop my notepad because notepad is actually a virus, in case you guys didn't know that. No. For this example, it's a virus. I can get the process. That's not a process, that's a printer. And then here we're going to supply the argument name. And let's say notepad. And then I'm actually going to pipe that into another command, which I don't know if you guys are going to know this intuitively, but stop process stops processes. And if I hit enter, notepad magically stops. It's so easy. And look, we're hackers. We have an awesome little, we have a command line. It's great, y'all. So what's really cool is when I did that pipe, the get process, I mentioned PowerShell is object-oriented. When I do the get process, and you see all this stuff up here, each one of these processes is a process object in PowerShell. But to keep the things feeling kind of scripty, and like you're in a real shell, instead of doing things object-oriented, when you, everything will do a .to string by default. So when I ran get processes all the way up here, it gave me a giant list of process objects, but because I'm trying to display this on a terminal and I can't just know what an abstract class looks like, it runs toString, and this is just what the toString looks like. And then when I have my, ooh, that's too far. So when I have my pipe, I'm actually piping all processes named notepad to the stop process. And we talked about pipes last talk. A pipe will take something from standard input and supply that as an argument. So stop process just received the the actual process objects from get process. That's kind of cool, but that's not like incredibly cool. We can do stuff. Again, we'll do this. Y'all have seen the event log in Windows. It's a really cool GUI. It shows you every event that's happened on your system. A lot of Indian scammers like to try and use the event viewer to tell you have a virus by showing you all these random errors, but no, the event viewer is just incredibly verbose. We can actually fetch all of those events ourselves. We're going to just look at everything in the system. And that's just way too much information, so we need to cancel that. Control-C, just like on your Linux environments, Control-C will cancel a process that's running on your command line. But I still want to see the stuff that's in there, so let's save it to a file. In shell, you have to just kind of know that discrete character like that, the greater than, I always get those mixed up. The greater than and then the file name is what will send everything in standard out to that file. It's slightly different in PowerShell. You can use the out file. Huh, isn't that just totally makes sense as opposed to a discrete character? Let's just go ahead and save this to users, and I have tab completion. It's awesome. Administrators, desktop, log.text. Oh, that was quick. And then a magical file just pops up on my computer on the other screen. And look, I have all my logs here. It's great. More interesting commands. I told you guys that you can do remote or you can do management. I can show you what that looks like. Normally, since this is a Windows server, if I wanted to handle my users, look at all this incredible crap I have to do. All these keystrokes. I have to first open up the management console, then I have to do that, then I have to do that, and just all this GUI. It's too much in my face, and I hate it, every minute of it. Look, just clicking through files, hierarchies. Why do we need a hierarchy right now? I just want to change a file. And look, I can put a person here called my user. Let's say their name is John Doe. Their password is password123. That's not a good password, by the way. But I have my user here, John Doe. But let's say we really need to change John Doe's password. If I wanted to change his password, I have to come all the way back to the management console. I'd have to go to the users, and I'd have to actually click his name. And that click is just way too much energy than I'm willing to put out. And it's not even that. Of course, it's not. You actually have to do this. Gotcha. You have to right-click, then click Set Password, in case you didn't know. And then you have to hit Proceed, and just all this. It's too much. I don't like Windows, even though I'm on a Windows machine. So we can actually run a command to change that password. It's pretty simple. We're just going to go ahead, and this time instead of getting the information, we're going to set some information. So let's set a local user. A particular user's name will be, I set it to user, right? Yeah. Let's go ahead and make their password, because password is also a parameter. Yeah, password. How about I make his password CSG123 bang. Oh, I got an error that time. So what happened here was password expects a secure string. If you look right here, secure string. And I just gave it a string. And so that's the type safety popping in, so it's not going to be able to convert that. So it's more just kind of a security feature. They don't really want you typing passwords into a command line. Sometimes that can be seen as a no-no. So instead, what I can do, and again, this is just because it's way better than doing the GUIs, I can go over here and I can create a variable named password. And we're just going to go ahead and create that secure string that they want. So we're going to read from the host, and we're going to set it as a secure string. When I do this, it'll pop up a window somewhere. Where'd that window go? Because again, Windows. Oh, that's cool. It didn't even show up. Gosh, I love this so much, y'all. All right. Why did that happen? All right, just pretend that that's a secure string. I'm going to pass that variable into the parameters, and it'll work.
Wait,
Well,
did it actually say something to the password?
no, that's a null variable because normally when you type that command, it'll actually give you a GUI prompt because, again, we're doing things with command line. But it'll give you that GUI prompt, and you can type in a password securely, and it'll save that secure string object to that variable, and then you pass that variable in where it wants the secure string.
So you could never actually get around to having a GUI.
Yeah, you really can't. There's just nothing. Well, no, there's ways you can do it. For that one, I'm not quite sure, though. I think you could probably have, there's another way you would probably do it, is you would save the hashed password and then send in the new hashed password, and it would set that password, because Windows supports doing that. But as far as like me being kind of like just a developer ops type and I need to change a password and I want to be cool and I want to do it from the command line, yeah, it's still going to give me a GUI. It's kind of ironic. And that's actually a cool thing about PowerShell because, again, everything has to be command line. You can actually create windows from inside of PowerShell. And so even though we're getting away from the GUI, we can still create GUIs. So that's great. Other commands we can try here, because that one sucked. If you've ever been on a Linux machine, you might know the curl or the wget command. That's a command that can let you fetch something from the web. We have a similar command, and again, because everything has to be pretty verbose, we're going to invoke a web request, and I can pass in a URI to do that. What do I want to fetch? Oh my gosh, I rebuilt the thing. It doesn't work anymore. Holy crap. Just grab Google. That's cool. Oh, and of course, because Windows is awesome, it gave me a window pop-up. Oh, and there you go. So yeah, something kind of cool is that the invoke web request actually will use Internet Explorer to do it. Internet Explorer. Right, oops, Freudian slip. And so with that little pop-up you saw, because I'm on a server, things have to be super secure. If you've never seen a Windows server before, normally there's a manager here that lets you do some little things.
Can you make the text bigger?
Can I make the text bigger on this? I can't. I'm sorry. You just have to imagine with me that there's a button right there that you can click to make things less secure and allow you to download things from the internet, because by default you can't download things from the internet on Windows Server because you don't need that. You got Windows, you're good. If you ever need help in Windows, you probably know in Shell or in Linux you can use the man command. In here it's a little bit more intuitive because who would know? Man stands for manual. Do I have questions? Oh yes, I love questions.
Could you go back up to
What do you want to see?
command? I was just writing it out on my computer.
What do you want to see?
Oh, what was the previous command?
Oh, the invoke web. Yeah, sure, bro. Yeah, so invoke web request, and if you look, it actually gave me an object, so I can show you what that looks like here in a second when you're done with that. And what are my Q&A? Huh? Can PowerShell replace SQL? No, because SQL is, well, I guess that kind of depends. Not really. You can use PowerShell to administer a SQL server. I assume if you had the right endpoints, you could probably do it for a MySQL or a Postgres database as well. But as far as replacing SQL as a syntax, I don't really think so, because PowerShell really is kind of meant more for getting and setting data in an object-oriented space, and SQL is meant for fetching things in the two-dimensional table that we're talking, or a two-dimensional array, like you'd expect a database to be. But I probably answered that wrong, so go figure. Can I show you guys the get nuclear launch codes? I only have half of them. The other half are in North Virginia, so they're going to be useless to you anyways. How do you find all the supported commands in PowerShell? All right, that's a good one. You can just simply get your commands, or just your command, because that's intuitive.
Oh, and it's waiting to find all.
Yeah.
Why? Control C, Control C.
How you guys? No, we got to get there.
What you have to live with.
You didn't want Windows, you got it.
Your choice.
That's an awful lot of commands. Something that's, in case you guys didn't know that, they actually give you a PowerShell integrated scripting environment. So it's like your IDE, but they call it an ISE because they have to be really cool. I'll show you guys what that looks like too. So it's kind of similar, except now it's in an even more clunky window. But the handy thing is on the side here, it'll actually give you a list of all your commands, and it makes it easier to search for. So let's say I want to look for any command that has to do with users. I can just type user. And then here's stuff that pertains to users. So I have a disable local user that could disable an account, and I could probably lock myself out if I disabled the administrator account. We're not going to do that. Something cool, you can build whole modules of your own PowerShell commands. So this machine that we're looking at right now is actually running in AWS, so it's in the cloud. So if I typed in AWS, you'll see they actually gave me a whole plethora of, I typed it in, I swear. They gave us a whole plethora of command. No, they didn't. Oh, no, there is. There's some here. If you look, there's a whole bunch of commands that you can actually use to administer your AWS account. And the module that holds all those commands came pre-built into my AWS virtual machine here. This environment can also be good if you need to actually create a PowerShell script. So a lot of times one command doesn't cut it. We're trying, and again, this is an object-oriented space, so we're trying to do lots of things. We probably have a really complex script that's got some for loops and junk going on. So we can actually create a PowerShell, we can create a PowerShell file, and we can run all our commands in here, and it's super cool. But so what if I wrote my commands here? I could do, oh, and there's tab completion. So the ISE is pretty handy for you, especially if you're just trying to get things going. So if I got my hosts, and then I also wanted to, oh, y'all can't see it. Yeah, you'll get the picture. So you can run multiple commands, and that helps you build your, this can help you build your script. You have your commands over here. Something really handy, let's say I have a command that I'm trying to look up. So let's say I don't know what the get local user command does. If I click on it, I hit the little question mark. It will give me the help documents at some point, but we're going to deal with that later. Well, something in. I mentioned that in Linux you have the man command. We have the man command as well because we thought that was cool. It's that man is actually, you can run man on PowerShell, but it's actually an alias for the command get help, which I think is kind of existential if you ask me. Let's say I don't know what the get local user command does. I can just go ahead and say get help, get local user. And then it gives me a cute little command page showing me everything I have to do with the get local user command. This is one of the areas where I do think Windows kind of got it better than how things are usually done in Linux environments right now, is that the get help command is really standardized and the documentation is pretty thorough. I don't always see that stuff with Linux commands. Sometimes even like it's difficult to figure out how to even get to the help page for a command because like say for one command you might have to use the -H and that will get you the command page for that command. Some commands might be using the -H for some other option, and when you do that you break something because the -H command was reserved for some other function built in the command. For everything in Windows it's standardized. If you have questions about a command, you get help on it. And it's usually pretty thorough. So if I want to see examples of how one would use the get help command, it's easy to do that because that doesn't work. There are too many commands, y'all. So yeah, if I want to see examples on top of this, so on this page right here, it showed us plenty of little bits of information about this command, how you use it. But if I want to see an example of how it's being used, because for some reason that just wasn't enough for me, I need more. I can get help, so I can do the exact same command, but just tack examples on, and it'll give me a whole nother page showing me just the examples of how it's used. So let's say you wanted to get a particular user and not just all the users, you tack the name parameter on there, which is actually kind of cool. I didn't show that to y'all, but I will. Get local user. If you don't add a name, it'll just show you all the users, and then you can refine your search from there. Trying to see what else I can do because I'm just buying time at this point. Questions, yeah. Where do you go to find supported commands for PowerShell? You have the get help command. You can look at your commands. Windows, the Microsoft website has a lot of fantastic resources on it, more than just what the get help command has. If you don't really know how to do something and you're just trying to like if you're still lost, normally Googling your question is great. Do I feel threatened, or do you feel threatened by PowerShell? I think I'm taller and less abstract than PowerShell, so I don't really feel threatened. Why don't I just click the X button on closing Notepad? So Notepad is actually a virus in this instance. Y'all didn't see it because my virus I wrote is actually like really discreet. But that's way better because you can actually override the X on the window, or you can override what the X on a window does in Microsoft, so that doesn't necessarily imply that you stopped the process, like on Skype, that's kind of old school, but if you're on Skype and you click the X, how it minimizes, and it does so kind of passive-aggressively because I hate Skype and I don't want it on, I just wanted you to stop. But you wanted to stop that process, you had to go to Task Manager and stop it. You don't have to do that. You can just do it through command line like elite hacker. How do I configure SharePoint with PowerShell? You consult one of the million blog posts that tells you how to do that, and good luck to you, whoever you are. If Control-C kills a process and wants the shorthand for copy. So that's kind of a really, that is actually a good question because for Windows, and it's kind of been standard, Control-C will always stop a command while it's running. But if you need to copy something, the latest versions of Windows, so this is a Windows Server 2019, the latest versions are kind of contextually aware. So if I have my cursor down here, and let's say I just want to copy the word description, I should be able to just highlight description and hit Control-C, and then I can Control-V it, and that works. But let's say I'm not, my cursor isn't directly in my prompt, so I'm up here, or there's a giant process list that's spewing out like we did a while ago, and I'm not in my command prompt at the second. I can hit Control-C then, and that'll stop the process. But if something's acting weird, or so that's kind of more of a new feature. If you're in a more legacy system, you can highlight the code, right-click, you can highlight the code, and now we're dealing with the differences of a Mac and a Windows machine. All right, pretend with me again for a moment.
I like press enter.
Yeah, you can do that too if you wanted, but you can also, I'm sorry, yeah, whose talk is this? So you can right-click on it and copy and paste from there too. But yeah, you could also hit enter if you're, lame. I had another point, but my computer shut down. Let me pull that up. Does Active Directory support YubiKey for login, and how do I set that up? That's a good question. So there's actually a couple different ways you could set that up. YubiKey supported a couple, and this is really derailing, but I like the question. So Active Directory, just plain Active Directory in the directory service allows you to have a private key, or I'm sorry, can you have a PKI private key associated to a user account? And the latest YubiKeys will also allow, it can emulate a smart card. So that's how a lot of people do it now, is you receive a YubiKey. By the way, if you guys, sorry, you guys don't know. YubiKey is a type of two-factor card. If you don't know what two-factor is, basically, if you're trying to log into an account, you type your password in, and then it prompts. Well, y'all have a security group, you probably know this. You type it in, and then it sends a text to your phone. That's a second factor, and that makes it a lot more difficult for somebody to hack your account, because now on top of knowing your password, they'd have to have your phone to get the one-time key that got sent to it. Or in this case, if you had a piece of hardware, like a YubiKey, that you had to plug into your computer to prove that you really are you and you need to sign in, that hacker would have to steal your YubiKey on top of getting your password, or somehow figure out how to crack the YubiKey. But that's how I would set it up, is I would have my YubiKey configured to emulate a smart card, and then I would have that be the second factor. I'm not quite sure if you could also do it if you're using Active Directory in a federated sense, or in the federated service. I don't know if it does support it. It should, but you could use the U2F functionality that a lot of the YubiKeys also do. How do I find the list of commands previously typed in PowerShell? Kind of similarly, you can just uptick if you want. There probably is a get history. I've never tried it, but I mean, sky's the limits, y'all. And I just keep doing that. Get history. Oh, cool. I figured that one out. Is there a get money command? God, I wish there was. Can I install Windows 10 Linux subsystem using PowerShell, like using Internet Explorer to download Chrome?
There is a command that'll enable like a translator, kind of like wine, but in reverse.
Huh.
And then you can install from the Microsoft Store, like Ubuntu or something.
Yeah. All right. There's your answer, whoever asked. And just to kind of make you guys depressed, I'll let you know, the latest version of, so again, what allows everything to be object-oriented inside of PowerShell is that all the commands are built on the .NET framework. So everything is kind of object-oriented to begin with, and so it returns objects to the PowerShell prompt. Cool thing, if you guys didn't know, Microsoft recently announced, or they released, I guess it was wild, they released the .NET Core, which is a free open source variant of the .NET framework. It's free open source and it's cross-platform, so if you wanted to, you could run a C# .NET program on a Linux machine. And just recently, they also released an alpha version of PowerShell Core, which is a version of PowerShell that you can run on Ubuntu. So if you wanted to, you could even replace your bash prompt on your Ubuntu machine with PowerShell, because it is superior. Are Empire modules written in PowerShell? I'm not sure what Empire is, I'm sorry. Can you use get help on get help? You know, I've never tried that. I feel like that's where they would probably have like an help. They'd probably have like an Easter egg or something hidden right there. Oh, I did it again. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of information there. So if you don't know what get help does, I think the greatest little kind of hint of irony here is that you have all this wall of text, and that's actually the abridged version. If you wanted to, you could just get the detailed version here. You know. Is there an apt-get /yum/pacman command for PowerShell? Ooh. So yes and no. I don't think that there's a well, all right. Normally, the way that Windows Server works, which is different from a regular Windows machine, is that you can add roles to the Windows Server. So if I wanted this machine here to become if I wanted to become a web server, I'd come over to the server manager, which again, I'm sorry, the font's going to be ridiculously tiny. But the tiny little button right here that says manage, and I could go add role, and it gives me another prompt, and it's all GUIs and it's gross. And I know that there's probably a way to do this by PowerShell, but I don't know the commands. This is how you would do it, is you would go ahead and click from here any role that you wanted this machine to be. So if you wanted to be a web server, you'd click web server. If you wanted to have FTP, you could do that. If you wanted it to be like a cache, you can do that too. How do I get PowerShell on Linux? I just told you. It's totally possible. I feel like that question might have been sarcastic, so ha. Is the process name Notepad case sensitive? In which case, what is case sensitive in PowerShell? So PowerShell is kind of weird in that things aren't really case sensitive. They kind of enforce a case. So if I type in get-help all lowercase, it's case insensitive, and I can do that, and it works just fine. And again, it gives me an error because I didn't add anything. But if I'm, say, doing the tab completion, and I've got get help and I hit tab complete, it'll kind of passive-aggressively capitalize the letters as they're supposed to be. Is Notepad case-sensitive in that instance? May or may not be, because normally with things like this with the arguments, they start off by listing all the processes, and then their the name attribute is really just filtering through all those in the collection to Notepad. So we can test this. It's really good though to actually have a Notepad running before you do that. So I have a Notepad, and over here I have my Notepad now. It moved. And I broke everything. It's just a nightmare. Get process by the name of capital in Notepad.
Oh, you need the dash.
What are you guys talking about? No. There we go. Yeah, so it looks like it's case insensitive. We solved that mystery. Looking for more questions here. Looking for your SharePoint on PowerShell. Sorry, who has to do that? A for loop? Ooh, good question.
So, like, if you were to run a for loop, like, change all of the files in it to have underscores instead of spaces.
Yeah. God, I wish I had awk instead. That'd be cool. I wish. So I use the example of saying, let's say we wanted to change everyone's name in PowerShell to the same name. Let's say we wanted I'm sorry, that didn't make any sense. Let's say we want to change all the usernames of all the users on this machine to John Doe. We just want to change their usernames to that. I guess you couldn't do that. We'll change their description to John Doe. Then we can get user, which ironically doesn't do anything because I'm a dumbass. And if you do get local user, it shows you the list of users. But because, again, everything's object oriented, if I wanted to manipulate the get local user, I can just grab the attributes based on this. So let's say I wanted to just know their name. Okay, well now I just have names. If you want to do a for loop, I could show you in a scripting environment because I don't really know the for commands myself. So there's a for each, which is kind of handy. Basically, in essence, what you would end up doing is a for each, and then you could run a function in that, which would basically it would run the same operation on each user, which is kind of handy because normally when we use our for loops, we're really just iterating through everything in the list anyways, so for each is kind of handy in case anyone doesn't know what a for each is. What are my last questions? I have a lot of test 1, test 2. Why do you guys do this to me? How would I execute PowerShell commands remotely from a local Linux terminal? Okay, if I had a Linux machine and I wanted to remotely configure a Windows machine, either I would remote desktop into it and do it GUI anyways, but let's say we don't have that option, we can't RDP into it, we just wanted to purely do a PowerShell to PowerShell, I would probably install the PowerShell core to my Linux machine and then use that. Again, you can set the parameter names to which computer you want to configure with the PowerShell command. I don't know if that would really work though, because again, the PowerShell core for Linux is still in alpha phase, so that's a great thing for you guys. Why are Windows GUIs so terrible? I.e. the small. Wow, you guys fed me the answer. Why are Windows GUIs so terrible? Because GUIs are pretty framed. You can't really do much with the GUI. It uses a lot of resources. With PowerShell, I'm interacting purely with objects, so there's a little bit more freedom with what I can do. A GUI might limit. I've seen really stupid user interface. I've seen things where, like, I've seen once a program that had a log text box in the GUI, and beautifully enough, you couldn't actually copy any of the log output. You just could look at it. So it made it really awkward, or made it really difficult when I need to Google this error that's showing up in the log file to figure out what the heck is going on. But I can't actually copy it. I have to type it all out in Google like a caveman. Can we adjourn yet? Yeah, bro, we've been here forever. You guys, that's about all I have. Oh, how does RDP work? RDP is cool. I said that. That's the last thing I'll say. RDP is Remote Desktop Protocol. It's a way of administering. Your Windows machines, and you basically just get the desktop on your machine, like I'm doing right now. I'm using a Mac. You can see my little Mac toolbar, but this is a Windows machine. So it's like VNC if you've ever done that. But yeah, that's it, y'all. Thanks for that.